Good Shabbos. This week's portion is Parshas Toldos. And in this portion, we begin the story of Yaakov and his children, which lasts until the end of the book of Bereshis. And here in the very beginning, we have a very troubling story about Yaakov, and one that is very difficult to understand in light of the morality and ethics that Judaism teaches. And that's the following. Yaakov is told by his mother Rivka that Yitzchak wants to give the blessings to Esav, his brother, and she tells him to go in and make believe you're Esav and get the brachas. Yaakov saying, Ula Yumusheni Avi, maybe my father will feel me because he was blind, and he will think that I'm a liar or a mocker, and I will get cursed. She says, don't worry, Alai kilascha b'ni, upon me is the curse, my son. And what does Yaakov do? He goes in, he follows the command of Rivka, his mother, and when Yitzchak says, who are you? He says, Anochi Esav b'chorecha, I am Esav, your firstborn. This is a lie which is of the first order. There's no way to explain this away, although Rashi says, maybe you're supposed to read it, Anochi, I am I, Esav b'chorecha, Esav is your firstborn. But as I like to often say, if one of my children came in and said that to me and then explained away their lie by saying, oh, you're supposed to put the comma here, I would look at them in the same way as I would when any outright lie is trying to be passed by me. So it's very troubling. Now, the way I would like to explain it is reading this as really not a question of lying and not lying, but it's all a metaphor. And that Esav and Yaakov represent two sides of the same personality. And that's why they're presented as twins. And Esav and Yaakov are constantly sort of in tension of which side they want to fall on. Does Esav want to follow the blessings and be like Yitzchak, his father? And does Yaakov want to be the warrior and the warrior like Esav, his brother? And they're constantly sort of fighting this within themselves. And Esav wants to be Yaakov and Esav, and Yaakov wants to be Esav and Yaakov. And therefore, when he says, Anochi Esav b'charecha, I am Esav, your firstborn, what he's really saying is, I have the qualities that you so much love in Esav, your firstborn. I want to be Esav, your firstborn. I have that within me also. I could be the full human being that I would like to be. Please give me the blessings because I'm the one that could fulfill all of your needs and all of your wishes and all of your desires and all of the dreams that you have based on the promises that God has given you. So that's, I think, something which could be read and explained, but it's explained away. In a sense, we're reading it as a metaphor. But when the average person reads this, he's faced with it saying Yaakov lied. And without knowing how to read this sort of in a literary fashion and saying it's just an allegory and it's not meant to be any type of prescription for real life telling the truth or lying, that doesn't seem to pass the smell test. So it's still very troubling to me. And the only answer I could give is to first of all understand that it doesn't seem that the Torah really concerns itself the way we do with pure truth-telling. That doesn't seem to be the way they deal with any of the issues. The issue is really much more does the end justify the means? And again, that's troubling from our modern perspective. We have an attachment to truth for truth's sake. But I think it is important for us to try to analyze that and see if we really believe that. Is it true that we will always tell the truth no matter what the consequences? I think the answer is clearly not. If we're faced with a life and death situation and lying is the only way to get out of it, then of course everyone would say you should lie. But what about if there's, go down in different degrees, then it's not life-threatening, but it's financially threatening, you're afraid for getting hurt physically. We can create many different types of cases and instances where you'd say, well, maybe in that case, lying is also okay. So here we could explain that we know from the beginning of the portion that Rivka was told in a prophecy that really Yaakov is the chosen one. Yaakov is the one who's supposed to have the blessings. And Yitzchak seems to be in the dark about that. And you could ask a question, why did Yaakov and Rivka just come into Yitzchak and tell him, listen, there's a prophecy. Yaakov is supposed to be the one that gets the blessings. So we could talk about that, discuss that, debate it, but let's assume that that wasn't possible, that somehow it was understood by Rivka and Yaakov that Yitzchak will never change his mind, and that he was definitely wrong, and the only way we could deal with this is by telling a lie, and therefore making believe that Yaakov is Esav, and Yaakov actually coming in and saying, Anochi Esav b'charecha, I am Esav, your firstborn. So I suppose when you look at it that way, you understand that perhaps the idea of emes, of truth, isn't always just pure truth-telling. It's trying to get to the correct end, the correct goal. And in a sense, that's really saying the end justifies the means, which we don't like to say, but we know is true in certain circumstances. Still, it's bothering me, at least, that it promotes the lie here in such a way that people will misunderstand it. And again, we're living in a time, I suppose, just the present politics that are going on throughout the world, and particularly in the United States, that lies have become so predominant that most people don't even know what's the truth and what are lies. And therefore, I would say the only way I could understand the story in a straightforward, literal way, besides explaining that here the ends are important, is to say that at least Yaakov understands that he's telling a lie. And maybe that's the most important part. There's always going to be instances where lying is okay, where lying is acceptable, or lying is necessary. However much we don't like to promote it, and again, as I say, that troubles me here. But maybe the real goal here is to show that what's really important is to be honest with yourself, not to have self-delusion. And again, referring to what's going on outside, in the outside world, we see that most of the problems are really from the people who are completely delusional, and they're completely going with the idea that their lies are really the truth. They convince themselves of their lies to such a degree that the truth has no bearing on their life anymore. And that's what's really troubling. In other words, you could look at some, let's say, politicians, and you could say, you know what? They know they're lying, and they're doing it for this purpose. And when everything's finished, they'll come back and live a truthful life. And you say to yourself, you know what? Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's understandable. But the real problem lies in those politicians who are not even willing to admit to themselves that they're lying. And they tell the lie so often that it becomes the truth. And maybe more importantly, all the people that fall for these lies and don't understand the difference anymore between truth and falsehood. And maybe this portion is telling us that, yes, sometimes lies are done, whether they're should be promoted or not be promoted. But at the end of the day, before Yaakov tells this big lie, he says, listen, my mother Rivka, I know I'm lying. And therefore, I understand that it's a lie. And Rivka's saying, no, it doesn't matter. You still should do it. The goal here is more important than the fact that you might be using what would usually be considered unethical means to attain that goal. And therefore, at least we can come out from this portion with saying, we have to be aware of what we're doing. We all are imperfect in many ways. There's none of us here who could probably claim that we never told a lie, that we never told a fib or a half-truth, that we never did anything that was immoral or unethical. Most of us, or almost all of us, cannot make such a claim. But what we have to realize is that, yes, we did do it. We might not even be able to, or come to the point where we're able to own up to it in public and come to admit our lies. But at least deep down, we should know who we are. And that is an important step to take in order to make sure that when the next time comes when a lie is something which is easy to do, we have to say, do we want to be that person? Do we want to be the person that lies? Do we want to be someone who's constantly saying, I am Esa b'charecha when I'm not? There's a certain point we have to come to terms with the truth and realize that, at least, if not externally, at least internally. And hopefully that's a lesson that we can learn from this week's portion. Good Shabbos.